The baby's eyes glowed gold, pure radiant gold. Not the amber of common wolves. Not the honey shade of pack warriors. But the unmistakable, legendary gold that hadn't been seen in 300 years. The midwife's hands trembled as she wrapped the infant, her breath catching in her throat. Because this child, this impossible child, belonged to the woman everyone called cursed. The woman cast out. The wolfless Omega who was supposed to be nothing. And now, in a frozen cottage at the edge of the forbidden wastes, that nothing had given birth to everything. Tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug. And if this story grips your soul, hit that subscribe button because you'll want to see how this ends. Trust me, you're not ready for what happens next. 6 months earlier, Livia stood in the grand hall of the Moon Peak Pack. Her head held high even as the judgment rained down upon her. Alpha Cassius, her mate, the man who had whispered promises into her skin under moonlight, now looked at her with eyes colder than winter stone. His jaw was carved from granite. His posture rigid with the weight of leadership and the cruelty of choice. "You have failed to shift," he declared, his voice echoing off the ancient timber beams. "For 3 years I have waited. For 3 years the pack has whispered. An Omega who cannot shift is not an Omega at all. She is human. And humans do not belong in pack hierarchy." Livia's fingers curled into her palms, nails biting crescents into her flesh. The wolf inside her, the presence she had always felt like a distant heartbeat, remained silent. Locked away behind some invisible wall she couldn't break through, no matter how many moons she had cried beneath, no matter how much blood she had offered to the ancient stones, no matter how desperately she had begged the moon goddess for just one transformation. "I am your mate," she said quietly, but the words carried through the hall. "The bond chose us. You felt it too." Cassius's expression flickered. Just for a moment, something human passed behind those alpha eyes. Regret, perhaps, or memory of softer times. Then his beta, a scarred warrior named Marcellus, stepped forward and the moment shattered. "The pack grows weak with a defective Luna," Marcellus announced. "Neighboring territories see our alpha bound to a wolfless woman and they circle like vultures. The Shadowcrest pack has already sent scouts to our borders. They smell weakness." Murmurs rippled through the assembled pack members. Livia could feel their eyes on her, some pitying, most condemning. These were wolves who valued strength above all else. Transformation was not just tradition, it was identity. It was proof of the wolf spirit living inside human skin. Without it, she was an anomaly, a mistake in the bloodline. "I have made my decision," Cassius said, and Livia's world tilted. "The mate bond is hereby rejected. Livia of the Eastern Meadows, you are banished from Moon Peak territory. You will take nothing but the clothes you wear and one day's rations. If you return, you will be treated as a rogue and dealt with accordingly." The words landed like physical blows. Rejection wasn't just emotional, it was metaphysical. Livia felt the golden thread that had connected her heart to Cassius's begin to fray, each fiber snapping with tiny explosions of agony that radiated through her chest. Her knees wanted to buckle, but she locked them straight. She would not collapse in front of these people. She would not give them that satisfaction. "There's something you should know," she said, her voice steady despite the inferno consuming her from within. "I'm carrying your child." The hall went silent. Absolutely, devastatingly silent. You could have heard a pine needle drop on the stone floor. Cassius's face drained of color, then flushed with something between rage and panic. "Impossible," Marcellus hissed. "A wolfless woman cannot carry alpha seed to term. The pregnancy would terminate within weeks. This is a lie to avoid banishment." "It's been 2 months," Livia said, placing a protective hand over her still flat stomach. "I've felt the heartbeat, strong and steady. Your child grows inside me, Cassius, whether you want to believe it or not." For a moment, she thought she saw his resolve crack. His eyes dropped to her abdomen, and something primal crossed his features. The alpha instinct to protect his offspring, perhaps. The man remembering the woman he had loved. But then Marcellus leaned in, whispering something urgent in his ear, and the shutters came down again. "If you are pregnant, which I doubt, the child will be wolfless like you," Cassius said. "A genetic dead end. Banishment stands. If you survive the wastes and the child is born alive, perhaps we will discuss visitation. But you will never set foot in this pack house again. You will never bear the title of Luna. And that child will never be recognized as heir to Moon Peak." He turned his back on her. The ancient gesture of complete dismissal. The pack members followed suit, one by one, until Livia stood alone in the center of the hall with 100 backs facing her like a forest of rejection. She left without another word. Pride was all she had left, and she wore it like armor as she walked through the gates of Moon Peak for the last time. The guards didn't meet her eyes. In the courtyard, a small bundle waited for her. Not the 1 day's rations Cassius had promised, but a more generous pack. When she opened it, she found dried meats, preserved fruits, warm clothes, and a small leather pouch of silver coins. No note, but the handwriting on the supply list was feminine. Someone in the pack, likely one of the older Omegas, had defied the Alpha's orders to give her a fighting chance. Livia pressed her hand to her stomach as she began walking east, toward the mountains and the infamous forbidden wastes beyond. "We'll survive," she whispered to the life inside her. "I promise you, little one. We'll survive." The journey to the wastes took 11 days. Livia traveled mostly at night, avoiding pack territories and human settlements alike. She was neither one thing nor the other now, belonging nowhere, fitting into no world. The wolfless Omega, the rejected mate, the pregnant outcast. She collected these identities like stones in a sack, each one weighing her down but also grounding her to reality. This was who she was now. She had to accept it to survive it. On the 8th day, she encountered a rogue. He was wild-eyed and half-starved, more beast than man. His humanity stripped away by too many years without pack bonds to anchor him. He came at her from the tree line, all teeth and claws and desperation. Livia didn't have a wolf to fight with, but she had something the rogue didn't expect. She had nothing left to lose. She grabbed a fallen branch and swung with every ounce of strength in her body, catching him across the temple. He went down hard, stunned, and she didn't wait to see if he'd get back up. Ran. Her lungs screamed and her legs burned, but she ran until the forest thinned and the ground turned rocky and she knew she'd crossed into the wastes. The forbidden wastes were called forbidden for good reason. No pack claimed them. No humans settled them. The land itself seemed hostile to life, all jagged rocks and twisted trees and winds that howled like dying wolves. But scattered throughout were small pockets of habitable ground, places where stubborn vegetation clung to existence and water could be found if you knew where to look. Livia found one of these pockets on her 12th day of exile. A small valley sheltered by cliff walls on 3 sides, with a stream running through it and a collapsed stone cottage that could be rebuilt. She looked at the ruins and felt something shift inside her chest. Not hope exactly. Hope was too bright a word for this. But possibility. The shadow of hope. The ghost of a future. "This is where we'll make our stand," she told her growing belly. "This is where you'll be born." She spent the next months transforming the cottage. She had no tools at first, only her hands and her will and the absolute certainty that failure meant death. She hauled stones. She wove branches into a roof frame. She hunted rabbits with snares made from her own hair. She gathered herbs and learned by trial and error which ones were edible and which ones made her violently ill. The pregnancy progressed, her belly swelling with life while her body grew lean and hard from labor. Sometimes, in the deep night when loneliness pressed down like a physical weight, she would feel the bond she'd shared with Cassius. It was severed but not gone, like a phantom limb that still ached where it used to be. She wondered if he felt it too. If he ever stood on his balcony looking east and thought of her. If he regretted his choice. Then she would harden her heart and remind herself that he had chosen power over love, pack over family. He had made his decision. She had to make hers. On a night when the first snow fell, she went into labor. alone in her cottage with only the fire for light and her own determination for comfort. The pain was unlike anything she had imagined. Wave after wave of it, crashing through her body, reshaping her from the inside out. She bit down on a leather strap to keep from screaming, not wanting to attract predators or rogues or whatever else hunted in the dark places of the wastes. Hours blurred together. She lost track of time, lost track of everything except the primal need to bring this child into the world. And then, in a rush of blood and water and impossible relief, she heard it cry, high and strong and absolutely perfectly alive. Livia gathered the baby to her chest with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. Boy. She had a son. She wrapped him in the softest cloth she'd managed to weave and held him close to her heart, feeling his warmth, his realness, his miraculous existence. That's when she saw it. The mark on the child's right shoulder blade, glowing faintly in the firelight, was a symbol. Not a birthmark, not a scar. Mark. The ancient sigil of the moon goddess herself. 3 crescents interlocked in an eternal triangle. And surrounding it, barely visible but undeniably there, was a corona of golden light. Livia's breath stopped in her throat. She knew this mark. Every wolf knew this mark. It was legend. It was prophecy. It was the sign that hadn't appeared in over 3 centuries, not since the first Alpha King had united the warring packs under one banner and brought peace to the wolf clans. The mark of the future Alpha King. Her son. Her impossible, miraculous son born from a wolfless mother and a father who had rejected them both. He carried the mark that meant he was destined to rule not just one pack, but all packs. He was the prophesied king who would rise when the wolf clans needed him most. Aurelius, she whispered, naming him after the greatest of the ancient Alpha Kings. Your name is Aurelius. The baby's eyes opened. Pure gold stared up at her, wise and ancient and knowing. For just a moment, Livia felt she was being seen by something far older than the infant in her arms. Then the golden glow faded to a normal baby's gaze, and Aurelius began to root for milk, hungry and perfect in hers. She fed him and settled him into sleep, then sat staring into the fire as the implications crashed over her like avalanches. If anyone discovered what her son was, they would come for him. Ambitious alphas who wanted to control the prophesied king. Power-hungry packs who wanted to eliminate him before he could unite the clans. Even Cassius, if he learned the truth, might try to reclaim the child he'd rejected, hoping to use Aurelius to expand his territory and influence. No one can know, Livia said to the sleeping infant. We stay hidden. We stay safe. Until you're strong enough to claim your destiny yourself. The years passed slowly in the wastes. Livia raised Aurelius in isolation, teaching him everything she knew and learning alongside him. The boy was extraordinary. He walked at 8 months, spoke in full sentences at 18 months, and by his 3rd birthday, he could identify every plant in the valley and track animals through the forest with uncanny precision. But the mark remained. It glowed sometimes, especially under the full moon, and Livia had to keep him inside on those nights, hiding the light that proclaimed his identity. She told him stories of the wolf packs, of the great Alpha Kings of old, of the prophecy that said one day a marked king would rise and unite the fractured clans. She never told him he was that king. He was too young. The knowledge would be too heavy. On Aurelius's 4th birthday, they had their first visitor. Livia was gathering water from the stream when she sensed the presence. Not a rogue this time. Something more controlled. More deliberate. She grabbed Aurelius and ran back to the cottage, bolting the door and positioning herself between her son and the entrance. The knock when it came was polite. Almost gentle. Livia of the Eastern Meadows. A woman's voice called. I mean you no harm. I've come a long way to speak with you. Please. I know what you're protecting. Livia's blood ran cold. She grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace, ready to fight. Go away. We want nothing from the packs. I'm not from the packs, the woman said. I'm from the Temple of the Moon. My name is Octavia. I'm a seer, and the goddess sent me visions of a boy born with the mark in the forbidden wastes. I've been searching for 2 years. Please, let me help you. The Temple of the Moon. Livia knew of it, the ancient order of priestesses who served the goddess directly, outside pack politics. They were neutral, sacred. If this woman truly was a seer. Slowly she opened the door. The woman standing there was old, maybe 70, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see through surfaces into deeper truths. She looked at Livia, then passed her to Aurelius, and her face transformed with wonder. By the goddess, Octavia breathed. It's true. The mark. The golden eyes. The prophecy walks among us. She dropped to her knees. My king. He's 4 years old, Livia said sharply. He's not anyone's king. He's my son. He's both, Octavia said gently, rising. May I come in? We have much to discuss. And you need to know what's happening in the pack territories. War is coming, Livia. The packs are fracturing. Alpha against alpha. Territory disputes turning bloody. The wolf clans haven't been this divided since before the first Alpha King united them. They need him. She gestured to Aurelius. They don't know it yet, but they need him. Livia let her in. Over tea made from herbs grown in her garden, Octavia told her everything. How the major packs were choosing sides, forming alliances. How Cassius's Moon Peak pack had been attacked 3 times in the past year by Shadowcrest forces. How smaller packs were being absorbed or destroyed. How rogues multiplied in the chaos, wolves driven mad by the loss of pack bonds. The goddess showed me in visions, Octavia said. She showed me that if the marked king doesn't rise soon, the wolf clans will destroy themselves. We'll return to the savage times before civilization, before law. Just endless war and bloodshed. He's a child, Livia said. How can a child stop a war? He can't. Not yet. But he needs to be trained. Prepared. Hidden, yes, but educated. I can help with that. I can bring tutors, warriors to teach him combat, scholars to teach him history and law. We can prepare him in secret, and when he's ready, when he's strong enough, then he reveals himself. Then he claims his destiny. Livia looked at her son, who was playing with wooden figures by the fire, acting out battles between wolves. He didn't understand the weight of the conversation, but even at 4, there was something commanding about him. Something that drew the eye and held it. If I agree to this, we do it my way, Livia said. No one knows his location. Teachers come blindfolded and leave blindfolded. His identity stays secret until I decide he's ready. And if any of this puts him in danger, it stops immediately. His safety is the only priority. Tavia smiled. You're a good mother. Fierce. Protective. He'll need that. The path ahead won't be easy for either of you. Nothing's been easy, Livia said. We'll manage. And so began the second phase of their exile. Octavia became a regular visitor, and through her, other teachers came. Cato, a retired pack warrior with scars covering his arms, taught Aurelius combat. He started with wooden swords and basic stances, but the boy learned with frightening speed. By age 6, he could disarm opponents twice his size. By 8, he moved like water, fluid and unstoppable. Portia, a scholar from the temple, taught him history, law, and pack politics. Aurelius absorbed it all, asking questions that made the old woman blink in surprise. He understood power dynamics intuitively, saw through manipulation and lies with ease, and demonstrated a strategic mind that would have intimidated alphas 3 times his age. But Livia taught him the most important lessons. She taught him compassion, taught him that power without mercy was tyranny, taught him that the strongest wolves were the ones who fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. She told him stories of omegas like her, pushed to the margins, underestimated and dismissed. She made sure he understood that leadership meant service, not dominance. On Aurelius's 10th birthday, everything changed. Octavia arrived at the cottage with news that made Livia's blood run cold. Cassius is dead, the seer said bluntly. Killed in battle 3 days ago. Shadowcrest pack overwhelmed Moonpeak's borders. Your former mate died defending his territory. Livia felt the ghost of their broken bond shiver and go silent. The last tiny thread connecting her to her past life dissolved like mist. She should have felt something. Grief perhaps, or vindication. Instead she felt empty. Just tired and empty. What happens to Moonpeak now? She asked. Marcellus has claimed the alpha position. But the pack is scattered, weakened. Many of the wolves are fleeing to other territories, seeking stronger leadership. Moonpeak will likely fall within the year. Tavia paused. There's something else. Before Cassius died, he was searching for you. For Aurelius. Apparently, a traveling merchant told him a story about a woman and a boy living in the wastes. A boy with golden eyes. Ice flooded Livia's veins. Did the merchant know where we are? He knew the general region. Cassius sent scouts before he died. They haven't found you yet, but they're looking. And now that Marcellus is alpha, he'll continue the search. He wants any potential heirs eliminated. Can't risk a challenge to his authority. Livia looked at her son, who had grown tall and strong. His 10th birthday marking him as nearly an adolescent in wolf years. The mark on his shoulder blade was more visible now, the golden light around it sometimes bright enough to see through his shirt. It's time, isn't it? She said quietly. Time to stop hiding. Tavia nodded. The packs are at their breaking point. The war has escalated. Just last month, the Nightfang and Ironwood packs annihilated each other in a 3-day battle. 700 wolves dead. Entire bloodlines extinguished. The goddess weeps, Livia. Her children are destroying themselves. Aurelius had been listening from across the room. He stood and walked over, his golden eyes serious. Tell me what I need to do, he said. Not a child's voice. Leader's voice. You need to go to the Council of Alphas, Octavia said. It's being held in neutral territory in 2 months. Every alpha will be there, trying to forge peace or prepare for final war. You walk in, you reveal the mark, and you claim your birthright. They'll try to kill him, Livia said flatly. An unknown boy claiming to be the prophesied king. They'll call him an impostor and tear him apart. That's why he won't be alone, Octavia said. The temple will back him. We've prepared for this moment for centuries. Our priestesses will testify to the authenticity of the mark. And we've quietly gathered supporters among the packs. Wolves who remember the old laws, who long for the unity the prophecy promises. It won't be safe, but nothing worthwhile ever is. Aurelius looked at his mother. You've kept me safe for 10 years. Kept me hidden, kept me alive. I know what you sacrificed. But I can't hide anymore, can I? People are dying. Packs are being destroyed. If I'm supposed to stop this, I have to try. Livia pulled him into a fierce embrace, feeling him solid and real in her arms. Her little boy who had grown into something extraordinary. Then we do this together, she said. I didn't survive exile and raise you alone just to let you walk into danger without me. The next 2 months were a frenzy of preparation. Octavia brought formal clothes, the ancient regalia of the Alpha Kings. A cloak of silver wolf fur, a tunic embroidered with a triple crescent, boots made from leather so old they'd absorbed the history of the wolf clans into their fibers. Aurelius tried it all on and looked like someone from a legend stepping out of the past into the present. Cato drilled him relentlessly on combat and protocol. You'll be challenged, the old warrior said. The aggressive alphas will demand proof of your strength. They'll force you into ritual combat. You need to win, but you also need to show mercy. Kill an alpha in front of the council and you'll make enemies. Defeat one with honor and you'll earn respect. Portia quizzed him on pack law and ancient precedent. Know the treaties. Know the bloodlines. Know which alphas have old grudges and which ones have secret alliances. Politics will be as dangerous as combat. Livia watched her son transform before her eyes from a boy into something more. Something that carried the weight of destiny on his shoulders but still had her smile, still had her determination. She felt pride and terror in equal measure. The journey to the council grounds took 5 days. They traveled with Octavia and a small contingent of temple priestesses, all of them wearing the white robes of the goddess's servants. When other travelers saw them on the road, they gave way respectfully. The temple was sacred, untouchable. It was the perfect disguise for smuggling a prophesied king to his destiny. On the final night before they reached the council grounds, Livia couldn't sleep. She sat outside their tent, staring at the stars, and Aurelius came to sit beside her. "Are you afraid?" she asked him. "Yes," he said honestly. "But you taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite fear. Moving forward even when you're terrified. When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." He leaned against her shoulder, and for a moment, he was her little boy again. Just her son, not a prophesied king, not a political instrument, just Aurelius. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know something. You saved me. Not just by keeping me alive, but by teaching me how to be a good man. A good leader. Whatever I become, it's because of you." Tears burned Livia's eyes. "You're going to be magnificent," she whispered. "They're going to see you and realize everything they've been fighting for is standing right in front of them. Unity is a future worth building. Or they're going to reject me and we're going to have to run for our lives." "That too," Livia admitted, and they both laughed quietly in the darkness. The Council of Alphas was held in an ancient amphitheater carved from white stone, open to the sky, surrounded by towering pines. Livia had never seen so many wolves in one place. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, representing every major pack in the territories. The Alphas sat in positions of honor, each one radiating power and authority. Cassius had been impressive, but these wolves were his equals or superiors. Ancient bloodlines, undefeated warriors, political masterminds. And Livia was going to walk her 10-year-old son into the center of all that power and ask them to bow to him. The proceedings had already started when they arrived. Alphas were arguing about territory boundaries, about reparations for attacks, about blood debts and ancient grudges. Voices rose and fell in waves of anger and frustration. No one was listening. Everyone was talking. It was chaos masquerading as diplomacy. Tavia stood. The silver-haired seer walked to the center of the amphitheater, and her presence commanded immediate silence. The temple was respected, feared even. What they said carried the weight of divine authority. "Alphas of the wolf clans," Octavia's voice rang out clear and strong. "You gather here to discuss peace while your territories burn. You debate boundaries while your wolves die. You cling to old grudges while the future crumbles. But the goddess has not forgotten her children. She sent a vision. She sent a prophecy. And today she sends you a king." Murmurs rippled through the assembled wolves. Livia felt her heart hammering against her ribs. This was it. The moment everything changed or everything ended. Octavia gestured, and Aurelius stepped forward. He wore the ancient regalia, the silver cloak flowing behind him, his golden eyes bright in the afternoon sun. He walked with confidence, with purpose, with the bearing of someone who knew exactly who he was and what he was meant to do. "I present to you Aurelius, born of the eastern meadows, son of Cassius of Moon Peak, bearer of the mark of the future Alpha King." The amphitheater erupted. Shouts of disbelief, anger, curiosity. Alphas surged to their feet, some moving closer to get a better look, others backing away as if Aurelius carried a plague. Livia positioned herself near the edge of the circle, ready to intervene if anyone tried to harm her son. "This is ridiculous," one alpha shouted. A massive man with a scarred face and the scent of Shadowcrest pack on him. This had to be Hadrian, the alpha who had killed Cassius. "A child. You expect us to bow to a child? Where's the mark? Prove it." Aurelius didn't flinch. He reached up and removed his tunic, turning to show his back to the assembled wolves. The mark blazed on his shoulder blade, the triple crescent surrounded by golden light so bright it seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Gasps echoed through the amphitheater. Even the skeptical alphas fell silent. "The mark is real," Octavia said. "Verified by the temple. Authenticated by the ancient texts. This boy is the fulfillment of the prophecy. The king who will unite the clans." "Or an elaborate fake," Hadrian snarled. "A trick. Temple magic designed to manipulate us into surrendering our autonomy. I don't recognize this boy's authority. I don't recognize anyone's authority but my own." Other alphas nodded. Livia could see the room dividing. Some wolves stared at Aurelius with wonder, with hope. Others looked at him with suspicion, with calculation. They were weighing the political implications, considering how a unified kingdom under one king would affect their personal power. "Then I challenge you to ritual combat," Aurelius said calmly. His voice was young but clear, carrying to every corner of the amphitheater. "The old law says any wolf can challenge an alpha's authority through combat. I challenge you, Hadrian of Shadowcrest. If I win, you acknowledge my claim. If you win, I leave peacefully and never return." The amphitheater went absolutely silent. A 10-year-old boy challenging a full-grown alpha to combat. Should have been laughable. Should have been suicide. But something about the way Aurelius stood, the absolute confidence in his golden eyes, made it seem possible. Hadrian smiled slowly. It was not a kind smile. "I accept. And when I tear you apart, boy, your false prophecy dies with you." The combat circle was cleared. Ancient rules applied. Shifted forms, fight to submission or death, no interference from outsiders. Livia wanted to scream, wanted to grab her son and run, but she forced herself to stay still. Aurelius had trained for this. He was ready. He had to be ready. Hadrian shifted first. His wolf form was enormous, black with silver streaks, all muscle and fang and killing intent. He'd killed hundreds of wolves in his long life, including Aurelius's father. He was a living weapon. Then Aurelius shifted, and the amphitheater gasped as one. His wolf form glowed. Pure golden light radiated from his fur, from his eyes, from the mark on his shoulder that seemed to have been transferred to his wolf body. He was smaller than Hadrian, younger, but he moved like liquid light, like concentrated destiny. Hadrian lunged, going for the throat in a kill strike. Aurelius dodged with inhuman speed, twisted, came up under Hadrian's guard and bit down on the larger wolf's front leg. Not hard enough to break bone, but hard enough to draw blood and prove he could have done worse. They separated and circled. Hadrian was more cautious now, respecting the speed if not the size of his opponent. He feinted left, attacked right, using his experience and his mass. But Aurelius seemed to anticipate every move, flowing around the attacks like water around stone. The fight lasted 20 minutes. 20 minutes of savage beauty, of ancient instinct meeting prophesied power. Hadrian landed blows, drew blood, used every dirty trick he'd learned in 100 battles. But Aurelius was faster, smarter, and something else. Something that made even the most skeptical wolves in the amphitheater start to believe. Finally, Aurelius made his move. He waited until Hadrian overextended on a lunge, then darted in, got his jaws around the larger wolf's throat, and held. Not biting down, not killing, just holding, proving he could end it but choosing not to. It was the perfect demonstration of power tempered with mercy, strength combined with restraint, the exact qualities a king needed. Hadrian shifted back to human form, Aurelius's jaws still at his throat. "I yield," the Shadowcrest Alpha said, the words clearly bitter but undeniable. "The boy has the skill. And the mark. I acknowledge his claim." Aurelius released him and shifted back to human form, standing naked and golden-eyed in the center of the combat circle. Octavia rushed forward with his clothes, but not before every wolf in the amphitheater had seen the mark blazing on his back, brighter now after the combat, as if the physical exertion had fed it, made it stronger. One by one the alphas approached. Some knelt immediately, recognizing the prophecy fulfilled. Others asked questions, demanded to examine the mark more closely, argued about political implications. But by sunset, every alpha in attendance had acknowledged Aurelius as the bearer of the mark. The prophesied king had revealed himself. It wasn't a complete victory. Several alphas left the council immediately, refusing to submit to a unified kingdom. They would cause problems later, Livia knew. They would scheme and rebel and possibly raise armies. But enough had accepted Aurelius that the tide had turned. The possibility of peace, of unity, of a future without constant war, had taken root. That night, in a tent provided by the temple, Livia held her exhausted son and let the tears come. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually did it." "We did it," Aurelius corrected. "None of this happens if you hadn't kept me alive, kept me hidden, raised me right. What happens now? Now we build a kingdom," he said simply. "We unite the packs. We end the wars. We create something worth protecting. You make it sound so easy. It won't be easy. It'll probably be the hardest thing anyone has ever done. But it's possible now. Before today it was just a dream. Now it's possible." The years that followed were exactly as difficult as Aurelius predicted. He established his capital in neutral territory, built a castle from white stone, and began the slow process of unifying the fractured wolf clans. Some packs joined willingly, seeing the wisdom in peace. Others had to be convinced through diplomacy, through shows of force, through strategic alliances. Livia served as his closest advisor. The wolfless Omega who had been cast out became the king's mother, respected and feared in equal measure. She built schools for Omega wolves, created laws protecting the weak, established systems to help rogues reintegrate into pack society. Everything she had suffered, she transformed into policy designed to prevent others from suffering the same way. Aurelius grew into his role. By 15, he was negotiating treaties that had eluded adult alphas for decades. By 18, he had united 70% of the wolf territories under his banner. By 20, he was undisputed alpha king of all the wolf clans, the prophecy fully realized. And through it all, the mark on his shoulder blade glowed. A constant reminder of the destiny he carried, the responsibility he bore, the impossible task he had accomplished. On the day of his coronation, Aurelius stood before thousands of wolves in the great amphitheater that had once been the council grounds. He wore a crown forged from silver and moonstone, carried a scepter carved from ancient oak, and looked every inch the king he was born to be. But before he took the oath, before he accepted the crown, he did something no one expected. He turned to where Livia stood among the dignitaries and extended his hand. "None of this happens without her," Aurelius said, his voice carrying to every corner of the amphitheater. "My mother, the woman they called Wolfless, the woman they cast out and condemned. She carried me through exile. She raised me in the wastes. She taught me that true strength isn't about claws and fangs. It's about enduring. It's about protecting those you love even when the whole world turns against you. It's about finding light in the darkest places and refusing to let that light go out." He guided Livia to stand beside him, and she felt every eye in the amphitheater on her. Some of these wolves had been there the day Cassius banished her. Some had turned their backs on her in that hall at Moon Peak. Now they watched as the prophesied king, the most powerful alpha in 3 centuries, honored her before them all. "I decree that no wolf shall ever again be cast out for being different," Aurelius announced. "No Omega shall be dismissed as worthless. No wolf who cannot shift shall be called defective. We are strongest when we protect all our members, not just the powerful ones. This is the first law of the unified kingdom. We value every wolf, regardless of rank or ability." The amphitheater erupted in cheers. Not everyone agreed. Livia could see that in some of the older alphas' faces. But enough agreed. Enough had learned from the wars. Enough had seen what happened when strength was valued over everything else. The coronation continued. Aurelius took his oaths, accepted the crown, and became officially what he had always been destined to be. Alpha King of the Wolf clans. Unifier of the territories. Bearer of the mark. But to Livia he was still her son. Still the baby she had delivered alone in a frozen cottage. Still the boy she had raised to be kind as well as strong. That night, after the celebrations had quieted and the dignitaries had retired, Livia stood on a balcony overlooking the new capital. The city spread out below her. Thousands of lights twinkling in the darkness. Wolves from every territory living together, trading together, building something new together. The impossible made real. "You should be proud," a voice said behind her. She turned to find Octavia, the old seer who had found them in the wastes so many years ago. The priestess looked ancient now, her silver hair gone completely white, her face a map of wrinkles. But her eyes were still sharp, still seeing things others couldn't. "I am proud," Livia said. "But I'm also terrified. He has so many enemies still. So many wolves who want him to fail. He also has you. And an entire kingdom of wolves who are learning to hope again. That counts for something." Octavia moved to stand beside her at the railing. "The goddess showed me another vision recently. Would you like to hear it?" "Do I have a choice?" Livia asked wryly. "Not really." Octavia smiled. "I saw you years from now. Old and gray and surrounded by grandchildren. I saw Aurelius with a mate of his own, strong and capable, helping him rule. I saw peace lasting. Not perfect peace, there will always be conflicts. But sustained peace. The kind that lets people build lives instead of just surviving. The kind that lets children grow up without knowing the terror of war. How many years from now? Does it matter? The point is you survive this. You both survive this. The hard part is done, Livia. You carried him through the wilderness. You raised him in exile. You prepared him for his destiny. Now you get to watch him live it. That's the reward for all those impossible years." Livia felt tears prick her eyes. "I never thought I'd live to see this. When Cassius banished me, when I walked into the wastes pregnant and alone, I didn't think I'd survive the first winter. I certainly didn't think I'd end up here. In a palace. Watching my son rule a kingdom." "The goddess works in mysterious ways," Octavia said. "She saw something in you. Saw the strength. Saw the determination. Saw that you were exactly the mother the future king needed. You think it was an accident that you couldn't shift? That you were cast out? That you ended up in the one place where you could raise him in secret, away from politics and corruption and power-hungry alphas? The goddess was preparing you both. Every hardship was a lesson. Every challenge was training." "That's a comforting thought," Livia said. "Though I wish the goddess had been slightly less thorough in her training methods." Octavia laughed. "I suspect if you could go back and do it differently, you wouldn't change a thing. Because changing anything might have changed him. And he's perfect for what he needs to be." She was right, Livia realized. As brutal as those years had been, as painful and terrifying and lonely, they had forged both her and Aurelius into exactly what they needed to be. Her into the mother advisor who could guide a king with wisdom born from suffering. Him into a leader who understood that power without compassion was worthless. "There's something I need to tell you," Octavia said, her tone shifting to something more serious. "About your wolf. The one you could never shift into." Livia's breath caught. In all the chaos of raising Aurelius and building a kingdom, she had almost forgotten about her own inability to transform. The thing that had defined her exile, that had caused all of this. What about it? It's not gone. It was never gone. The goddess sealed it away to protect Aurelius. If you had been able to shift, if you had been a normal Omega, Cassius might have kept you. And if he'd kept you, if Aurelius had been raised in Moonpeak as an acknowledged heir, he would have been assassinated before his 5th birthday. The mark would have made him a target. The only way to keep him safe was to keep him hidden. And the only way to hide him was to get you both as far from pack politics as possible. So my wolf was sacrificed to protect my son. Not sacrificed. Sealed. There's a difference. Octavia reached out and placed her hand over Livia's heart. The seal breaks tonight. The danger has passed. Aurelius is established, protected by his own power and the loyalty of his kingdom. You don't need to be wolfless anymore. The goddess returns what she borrowed. Livia felt it then. A stirring deep inside her chest. The presence she had felt all those years ago. The heartbeat that had gone silent when Cassius rejected her. It was waking up, stretching, rising to the surface after decades of forced sleep. "What do I do?" she whispered. "Go to the forest," Octavia said. "Let her out. She's been waiting a long time to meet you." Livia ran. She left the palace, left the city, ran into the forest that bordered the capital until she was deep among the trees and completely alone. The moon was full overhead, bathing everything in silver light. She felt the wolf inside her pressing against her skin, eager, ready, absolutely done with being contained. Let go. Let the transformation take her. And it was nothing like she had imagined. There was no pain, no struggle. It was like stepping through a door into a room that had always been hers but that she'd been locked out of. Her bones shifted, her muscles reformed, fur erupted across her skin, and suddenly she was standing on 4 legs instead of 2. Her wolf was silver, pure silver like moonlight given form. And she was fast. Livia ran through the forest, testing this new body, reveling in the strength and grace and absolute rightness of it. She could smell everything, hear everything, feel the earth beneath her paws and the wind in her fur and the joy of finally being whole. She ran for hours. Ran until exhaustion and exhilaration merged into a kind of euphoria. When she finally shifted back to human form and walked back toward the capital, she felt different. Complete. She had spent so many years defined by what she lacked. Wolfless. Rejected. Exiled. Now those definitions were obsolete. She was simply Livia. Mother of the king. Omega of great strength. Woman who had survived the impossible and emerged victorious. When she returned to the palace, Aurelius was waiting for her. He took one look at her face and knew. "You shifted," he said, wonder in his voice. "I shifted," she confirmed. "After all these years. Your grandmother, the goddess, she gave me back my wolf." "I'm glad," Aurelius said, pulling her into a hug. "You deserved that. Deserved to be whole." "I was always whole," Livia said. "I just didn't realize it. The wolf doesn't make us whole. The choices we make, the people we protect, the love we carry, that's what makes us whole. The wolf is just a bonus." Over the following years, the kingdom Aurelius built flourished. He established the Code of Unity, a set of laws that governed all the packs fairly. He created the Council of Territories, where each major pack sent a representative to discuss issues and vote on kingdom-wide policies. He built roads connecting the far-flung territories, established trade routes, created a standing army to defend against external threats instead of internal ones. And he never forgot where he came from. Every year on the anniversary of his birth, he would travel to the Forbidden Wastes, to the cottage where Livia had raised him. He'd spend the day there in meditation and remembrance, honoring the sacrifice and the struggle that had made everything else possible. Livia watched him become not just a king but a legend. Stories spread about the golden-eyed alpha who had united the clans. Songs were written about his battles and his wisdom. Pups grew up hearing about him as if he were a figure from ancient mythology, even though he was very much alive and ruling from the white stone castle. But he never let the legend consume the man. He remained accessible to his people, hearing petitions personally, walking through the capital to speak with common wolves. He remembered that he had been born to a rejected Omega in exile. He remembered what it felt like to be dismissed and underestimated. And he used those memories to be a better king. When Aurelius was 25, he found his mate. Her name was Livia, an alpha's daughter from a small territory in the eastern mountains. She was fierce and intelligent, with a tactical mind that complemented Aurelius's strategic thinking perfectly. Their bond formed naturally, without political maneuvering or arranged marriage. Just 2 wolves recognizing in each other the partnership they needed. Livia liked her immediately. Lavinia had the same quiet strength that Livia had developed during her years in the wastes. She didn't need to dominate every room she entered. She was confident in her own power, secure in her own worth. She and Aurelius were perfect for each other. The royal wedding was held in the amphitheater, with representatives from every pack in attendance. Livia sat in a place of honor, watching her son pledge his life to his mate, and felt a profound sense of peace. The journey that had started with banishment and rejection had led here, to this moment of joy and unity and hope. Lavinia gave Aurelius 3 children over the next decade. 2 sons and a daughter, each born with the golden eyes that marked them as descendants of the prophesied king. The bloodline was secured. The kingdom's future was guaranteed. And Livia got to be the grandmother Octavia had predicted, surrounded by grandchildren who climbed on her and demanded stories about the old days. She told them everything. Told them about the exile, about the cottage in the wastes, about their father being born in a snowstorm with a mark glowing on his back. Told them about the years of hiding and training and preparation. Told them about the Council of Alphas and the ritual combat, and the moment their father revealed himself to the world. But mostly she told them about perseverance. About refusing to give up even when everything seems hopeless. About finding strength in the darkest moments. About how love and determination can overcome any obstacle, any prejudice, any seemingly insurmountable challenge. Your father is a great king, she would say. But before he was a king, he was my son. And I raised him to understand that greatness isn't about power or glory. It's about using whatever you have, whatever you are, to make the world a little better for those around you. That's the secret. That's what really matters. The grandchildren absorbed these lessons the way their father had absorbed them. They grew up understanding that their privileged position came with responsibility. That their power was meant to serve, not to dominate. That every wolf in the kingdom, from the highest alpha to the lowest omega, deserved dignity and respect. When Livia was 60, Octavia died. The old seer passed peacefully in her sleep at the temple, having lived long enough to see her visions come true. Livia attended the funeral and wept for the woman who had found her in the wastes, who had believed in Aurelius when he was just a child with a strange mark, who had guided them both through the treacherous political landscape of revealing a prophesied king to a skeptical world. She was the first person to call me king, Aurelius said, standing beside his mother at the funeral. Before I understood what that meant, before I was ready for it, she saw it. She believed it. And she made me believe it too. She was a good friend, Livia said. To both of us. After Octavia's death, Livia began to feel her own age creeping in. Nothing dramatic, just the slow accumulation of years. Her silver hair turned white. Her hands developed arthritis. She moved a little slower, tired a little easier. But her mind remained sharp, and Aurelius still sought her counsel on important matters. You're the only one who remembers what it was like before, he told her once. Before the unity, before the peace. You remember the wars, the chaos, the fear. That perspective is invaluable. It keeps me from taking this peace for granted. You could never take it for granted, Livia said. You fought too hard to build it. We fought too hard, he corrected. Never forget that. This kingdom exists because you survived impossible odds and raised me to be worthy of it. As Livia entered her 70s, she began spending more time in the wastes. The cottage had been preserved as a historical site, but she had a new residence built nearby. Something comfortable and warm, with windows overlooking the valley where she had raised Aurelius. She would sit on her porch and watch the seasons change, remembering those desperate years when survival was measured in days, not decades. Young wolves would make pilgrimages to see her. They'd heard the stories and wanted to meet the Wolfless Omega who had raised a king. She'd welcome them, share tea, answer their questions. Many of them were Omegas themselves, or wolves who felt marginalized in their packs, and they drew inspiration from her story. If I could survive exile and raise a king, she'd tell them, then you can survive whatever challenges you're facing. The key is to never stop moving forward. Never stop hoping. Never stop believing that better days are possible. On her 80th birthday, the entire royal family traveled to the wastes to celebrate with her. Aurelius, now 50 and still strong but beginning to show his own gray hair. Livia, graceful and wise. The 3 grown children, each serving the kingdom in different capacities. And 7 grandchildren ranging from age 20 to age 5, all golden-eyed and full of life. They held a feast in her honor. Not a grand state affair but an intimate family gathering, the kind Livia loved best. They ate and drank and told stories late into the night. And when the young ones had fallen asleep and only the adults remained, Aurelius stood and raised his glass. "To my mother," he said, "who taught me that strength comes in many forms. Who showed me that being cast out doesn't mean being defeated. Who proved that one determined wolf can change the entire world. Everything I am, everything this kingdom is, exists because you refused to give up. Because you chose to survive. Because you loved me enough to endure the impossible." Everyone drank, and Livia felt tears streaming down her face. Happy tears this time. Grateful tears. She had lived to see everything she'd fought for come to fruition. She had lived to see her son not just survive but thrive. She had lived to see peace replace war, unity replace division, hope replace despair. "I need to tell you all something," Livia said, her voice quiet but clear. "Something I realized recently. When Cassius banished me, I thought it was the worst thing that could ever happen. I thought my life was over. I thought I was being destroyed. But I was wrong. I wasn't being destroyed. I was being refined. Stripped down to my essential self and rebuilt stronger. Every hardship in the wastes, every moment of fear and loneliness and desperation, was forging me into exactly what I needed to be. What Aurelius needed me to be. What all of you needed me to be." She looked around at her family, at the faces illuminated by firelight. "So if you're facing hard times, if you feel like you're being broken, remember this. You might be being refined instead. You might be in the process of becoming something extraordinary. Don't give up. Don't surrender. Keep moving forward. Because you never know what miracle is waiting on the other side of the struggle." They sat in silence for a long moment, absorbing her words. Then the grandchildren began asking for stories, and Livia obliged. She told them about the night Aurelius was born, about the first time she saw the mark glowing on his back, about the years of training and hiding and preparing. She told them about the Council of Alphas and the ritual combat and the coronation. But she also told them about the small moments. About teaching Aurelius to read using books Octavia had smuggled to them. About hunting together in the forest, mother and son working as a team. About winter nights huddled by the fire, playing games with stones and sticks. About the quiet joy of watching him grow, of seeing him become himself. "Those are the moments I treasure most," she said. "Not the grand historical events, but the small, everyday moments of being his mother. Of loving him and being loved by him. That's what made all the struggle worthwhile. That's what makes life meaningful. Not the destiny, not the prophecy, not the kingdom. Just the love between a mother and her child." As the night deepened and the fire burned low, Livia looked at her family and felt complete. She had started as a rejected omega, dismissed as worthless. She had been cast out, labeled as defective, condemned to exile and death. But she had survived. More than survived. She had created a legacy that would echo through generations. The Wolfless Omega had raised a king. And in doing so, had become a legend herself. Not for her power or her rank, but for her perseverance. For her love. For her absolute refusal to let circumstances define her worth. When Livia died, peacefully in her sleep at the age of 87, the entire kingdom mourned. Aurelius declared a month of remembrance. Every pack lowered their banners. Wolves from every territory traveled to the capital to pay their respects. She was buried in the royal crypts, next to Octavia and the other great figures who had built the unified kingdom. But her true memorial wasn't a tomb. It was the laws Aurelius had enacted to protect vulnerable wolves. It was the schools for omegas that bore her name. It was the generations of wolves who grew up hearing her story and drawing strength from it. It was the kingdom itself, built on principles she had instilled in her son during those desperate years in the wastes. Years later, when Aurelius was old and grey himself and preparing to pass the crown to his eldest son, he made one final trip to the cottage in the forbidden wastes. He stood in the place where he'd been born, where his mother had delivered him alone in a snowstorm, and he wept. "Thank you," he whispered to her memory, "for everything, for your strength, for your love, for refusing to give up on me even when the world had given up on you. I hope I made you proud. I hope I became the man you always believed I could be." The wind rustled through the trees, and for just a moment, Aurelius could have sworn he felt a presence. His mother's spirit, perhaps, or just the memory of her so strong it felt real. Either way, he felt comforted. He felt loved. He felt seen. He placed a crown of wildflowers on the doorstep of the cottage, a tribute to the woman who had worn no crown but had been more regal than any queen. Then he shifted into his golden wolf form and ran through the wastes, retracing the paths his mother had walked, honoring the journey she had made, celebrating the impossible thing she had accomplished. Because she had been told she was nothing. She had been cast out and rejected and labeled as defective. But she had proven that wolfless didn't mean worthless. That being different didn't mean being less. That true strength wasn't about what form you could take or what rank you held. It was about what you endured, what you protected, what you built from the ruins of your broken life. The legend of the wolfless Omega who raised the prophesied king spread beyond the wolf territories. Humans heard it and were inspired. Other supernatural beings heard it and took courage. It became a universal story about refusing to be defined by others' limitations, about finding strength in impossible circumstances, about how love and determination can overcome any obstacle. And at the heart of that legend was a simple truth. Livia had been extraordinary not because of any special power or divine gift, but because she had chosen to be. She had chosen to survive when dying would have been easier. She had chosen to protect when abandoning would have been simpler. She had chosen to love when hate would have been justified. Those choices had changed the world, had built a kingdom, had fulfilled a prophecy, and had proven beyond any doubt that the most powerful force in existence isn't magic or strength or destiny. It's the will of a mother protecting her child. It's the determination of someone who refuses to accept the limitations others place on them. It's the courage to keep going even when every rational voice says to quit. That was Livia's legacy. Not the crown her son wore or the kingdom he ruled, but the example she set. The proof she provided that one person, even a rejected and despised person, could change everything. And somewhere in the collective memory of the wolf clans, in the stories told around fires and the lessons taught to pups, her voice still echoes. Never give up. Never surrender. Keep moving forward. Because you never know what miracle is waiting on the other side of your struggle. The wolfless Omega had become a queen in all the ways that mattered. And her story would live forever,